Hello, hello again, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. Another one. You know we're here. It's 11 a.m. Eastern on a Thursday. We're live on my channel here. Brought you a special guest, though, this week. If you saw earlier in the week and you saw the email that went out this morning, you should be on the email list. If you're not, got to get on there. But I'm here, as you guys can tell, with Mr. Brendan O'Connell. Sir, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Hello, good morning to you, Mark. Thanks for
Yes,
having
thank you
me.
for being.
Excited to
Thank you
be
for
here.
being here.
Excited to be
Hell
here.
yeah, dude. Hell you do. As you guys know, I don't need to probably recap you on this, but Brendan's been doing a lot of cool API tinkering with WordPress and different platforms on his website. As we said, we had that chat earlier in the week, the pre-recorded chat that I think you guys hopefully got some value out of. Appreciate you showing the love on that video about just like learning this world of APIs. And I think what we'll do here today is we don't have a specific agenda or plan, so to speak. It's kind of more as like we're experimenting. Brendan's further along than me. I know there's people in the chat that are way further along than me in the API game. And I think the cool thing about WordPress is the extensibility, as we all know, and like you can do so many different things. We're just talking about those types of things, and we'll show some stuff off. And yeah, it's kind of where I'm thinking that we're going to go today. If you guys have any thoughts, questions, or ideas in the chat, please leave them. We've already got some great ones, so appreciate it. And let us know if we're looking good and sounding good and all that jazz, because, you know, it's live. So, real quick, David, appreciate you being here. Excited to see some API examples that I can go play around with later on yet. And also, if you guys aren't subscribed and haven't seen any of David's content, I think there was a recent video that he put out about dynamic shortcodes, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is Dynamic OOO. Is that like a similar plugin, or it's their newer plugin or something like that? It's in that ecosystem, which I
Yeah.
used heavily to extend Elementor when I was mainly using Elementor as my page builder. Very, very good. And it's very cool that like I think what you'll see today and what you heard in that last conversation too is Brendan and I have kind of come at this slightly differently and arrived at a similar thing. And I'll let you explain it on your end, Brendan. But like there's kind of a concept of UI because like everything is like being GUI, like GUI-ized, if you will, or whatever. And then there's also like just doing things via code. And I'm by no means a developer, but I kind of went about it a different way. So Brendan, real quick, if you want to run the people through kind of how your concept on how you think you're leveraging APIs or like the different types of things that you can do there, and like how you just your quick little background, especially recently, how you've kind of delved into this
Yeah,
different
definitely.
area of WordPress.
For sure. Because to me, it's very much related to the concept of just dynamic data in general that is rendered through ACF or Metabox, except that it's, an external source basically. And yeah, shout out to Dave that he's got a great video on that dynamic shortcode plugin that also brings in, it seems like, live API data pretty easily. So I'm excited to see that more and more in the WordPress scene. I've been also just kind of checking out non-WordPress stuff related to this, so I'll share a little bit about that later, and also have some WordPress stuff. I mean, like WordPress has the built-in REST API, so it comes with every WordPress site. So it's pretty nice to understand it and to understand how to extend that and use it, to our advantage.
All right, we got our first question
Oh
here. That's a
man.
tough one. I feel like I'm getting pop quizzed. I think it's application program interface. Is it close? Am I
Yep, that
close?
sounds right to me. That sounds right to me. I'm going
Somebody,
with yes.
yeah, somebody double check it. Somebody
Yeah,
fact check
it's
us on
it's like
that.
a way for two different programs to talk together. So you connect any Google product to your website or something like that, and it's using an API to talk to it. And then there's the question about a UI to actually build these things. That's not just writing code. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't claim to be an expert. I want to make that disclaimer right now. I'm a avid learner, very curious, and a tinkerer. And we're definitely not going to be building APIs. That's not what this is. So if you thought that was, sorry. But
Well, I don't know. Don't speak too
well,
soon.
maybe. All right, we'll chat GPT it, Claude it, and we'll make it happen. But on the whole, on the API side of things, though, I think we should probably start to like because like I was asking these questions, we put out the polls and everything like that. Like, what are some of the reasons that like we would want to use this? Because like for people that may be like even just like first hearing the idea of like APIs, specifically in WordPress, but just in general, like to our understanding so far, a quick conversation about like why we'd want to use these things and like how they actually benefit us versus,
Laziness, actually, at the end of
laziness.
the day, laziness. If you learn a little bit about this, you'll see that you don't have to build everything in WordPress. Like, I just remember the days of like you just before custom post types, you would build out a ton of location pages and things like that. So it's leveraging data that exists already, or that you need to connect in, like your user interface or your user data from like something like Firebase or Supabase or Xano. You can have a whole backend for all your customer data, everything related to customers, and keep it contained within all your different apps, not just WordPress.
Yeah.
So that's sort of more on the scaling side, right? Like when you get hundreds of thousands of customers. But that's sort of how I'm looking at it, where businesses can have their things distributed, right? Not having everything in one basket, and just leveraging the speed with which APIs just send data.
I'm so glad you're here on this chat because you're already saying stuff that like I kind of know, but I don't. I'm not fully there yet. Just with some of these terms and these
Laziness?
I could not laziness. Well, I'm definitely I know that one. But like Firebase, like as an example, like those types of things. Like I've heard of those different like I don't know if you call them like products or applications or whatever, but like I don't know. There's a lot out there, and there's more than one way to do things. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like here's someone really quick in the chat here. API data to grab data from a Google Sheet that is constantly updated from another source. So I don't have to use a plugin. Yeah, so like the concept of um, I don't even know what plugins exactly do this, but like imagine you have an e-commerce site and you have all your product data in a sheet somewhere. It could be Excel or Sheets, whatever. But you want to run a sale and you want to update all your pricing sort of from your spreadsheet data, because that data also is sent outside of WooCommerce potentially.
Yeah.
So you have all your product data. You could run, a 15% increase on all your whatever designated products, have that updated in WooCommerce as well as everywhere else that you have that data. So yeah, that's exactly right.
I think this is like a good real world example there too, because there's a couple different ways that I would think about it. Again, I'm coming at it from definitely a beginner standpoint. If I wanted to do something like that, and I know that you have videos on this, is if I wanted to have a Google sheet, because this part is like, you think about it in levels of people's technical ability or just like their experience in that area, and you think like, okay, probably at very ground zero or close to it, they could, pop open a spreadsheet and they could put like product title in one column, they could put price, they could put sale price, they could put whatever. So if they fill out all that data out, I think it was back in the day where they had like Microsoft Excel and Microsoft and like Access and all that sort of stuff. Like it's all very similar in a way. Like you could kind of see the parallels between like how a spreadsheet could be like a database. Obviously, it's
Right.
not, but like there's a lot that's like kind of slightly overlapping there, and it gets more and more technical. So like if you had just a person do all of that, then and you wanted to have like your client or somebody manage things from a spreadsheet, how would you kind of go about that? I mean, I can think of a couple different ways, but at the entry level, would you use something like Active Pieces, Zapier, stuff like that? And those tools are kind of found their way like right into the middle ground of kind of what we're talking about here with APIs, because they're
Yeah,
just like the UIs to connect the things, right?
totally. I mean, I literally was working on this last night. I got it working. I have data in a Google spreadsheet. I'll share this later, or I can screen share now. But the idea is that exactly thing, where you're using the REST API that's built into WordPress. You're authenticating in with the JSON plugin. There's other ways to do that too. And also, let's just do a disclaimer. We'll show some stuff here that like maybe is not the best security stuff. Like we might have API keys in the header
Mm-hmm.
that are not like hidden or whatever. So this stuff does get complicated pretty quickly. But yes, Active Pieces is a really quick way to do that, because the REST API has patch. So there's get, post, patch, delete. Patch updates only the data that's been changed. So I have a trigger that looks at a spreadsheet. Anytime the trigger column changes any of that data, it only changes that data. So it's not going through and doing a whole API call on everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll quickly show that. I'll make a video about it, because I think that's something people need to be able to do. So
Okay. All right, so I think we have a ton of incredibly good. Appreciate you guys all chatting here. Lex, I want to highlight this one. There's a bunch of other ones I want to highlight here, but NAN. I think Panda in the chat here also just told me about that. Sent me a bunch of messages that are just packed with value that I need to fully go through. Apparently, side note from what I learned there is Bricks. There is a custom Chat GPT, like GPT for Bricks.
Hmm.
That's incredible.
Interesting. Yeah.
So that's
That's
interesting.
one of the, it's at that site that has like a bunch of different sort of top plugins and things like that.
I think. I mean, I just Panda just linked it to me
Okay.
in a DM, and then I pulled it up. So like it's
Cool,
literally
cool.
just like on there. So that's kind of sick. I don't know, just a lot of stuff going on here. Again, we're trying to just wade through the waters of the beginnerness here, and then like obviously everything that you guys have because there's a ton of content out there. I just feel like we need to kind of like start somewhere. So I mean, Brennan, if you want to bring it up and we kind of just start going through some of the kind of the demo examples
Sure.
and things
Let's
like
let's
that.
just do that. I'll start with active pieces just because I was just talking about it. Give me a second here.
Yeah,
All
there's
right,
a
here
couple.
we
There's a lot of
go.
really good stuff here. I'm Lex. I almost want to do this one live right here as well, because I feel like this is probably relatively. I'm not going to say it's simple to do perfectly, but I have some videos coming out this week where like the thing where we're talking about, I think in the other conversation, where to like show if we're live or not, like a section, like a dynamic condition, a custom dynamic condition in Bricks
Mhm.
where you can see if the person is live or not, like the channel is live or not. And I really want to do that. And I think the subscription count seems like I'm
And
saying it's straightforward. Is it straightforward? I have no idea, but we'll see.
I do have something kind of related to that later on too. So
Nice.
I'm prepared. I came prepared today. Okay, like this is the first
Brendan
time
is
in my
always
life,
prepared. I
dude.
am
This
never prepared. Brendan is always prepared.
I love this stuff. This stuff is so fun. So this is exactly what we were just talking about.
Real
And
quick before you start, let
yeah,
us know if you guys can see this, if we need to zoom in at all, because I know it kind of gets a little weird. I try to do my best with the layout here, but
I'll make this a little bigger. Pretty simple stuff here. Yeah, you see, I can see the spreadsheet in the share here. So what we have are some custom post types that I've created already. So I'm not, again, this is not like the quote unquote best way to do this, but what I've done is I created these first, and any post that you create in WordPress has a post ID, right? So these all are sort of sequential from like what 1453 up, and what it's doing is, so I've got the names right there, right? So that matches. And if I edit any of these, we have a price, right? This could very easily be WooCommerce or whatever, any other post type. But what it's doing, so I have a change here where I can say whatever 5% increase in price, and so we have an adjusted price column here, and then the base price where it changes. And what it's doing is active pieces. It's literally just these two triggers. So we have Google Sheet trigger as the initial thing, right? So it's looking at my sheet, right? I have all this connected here, right? Pretty simple to set up. And then I just selected a trigger column, and it's looking at the adjusted price column. So anytime this column changes, it's going to run this API, or it's going to run this trigger, right? And then it's going to do a custom API call to WordPress, and it's a patch method instead of like get or post or put or delete, etc. So patch updates data, and that's basically it. And then I just have the ACF field, and again, this is sort of tying into, or building off of my other active piece video where I go into sort of setting this whole thing up and how this works. But yeah, you come in here and I select my updated price. Sorry, my thing's hiding. Yeah, there's my adjusted price column. Anytime that changes, it's going to go into ACF, update the price. If the name of the product changes, it'll also do that. Right. So
so
that's
we
yeah.
talked about this too. This is ACF obviously, and you might be able to do this. We scroll up. Does it have ACF like integration now, or could you not use that? Well, you're doing custom API call,
Yeah,
but
so I'm
like
doing it.
before.
Yeah, that's right. I'm doing a custom API call. I think if I just add another trigger real quick, not trigger, but whatever, step in the flow. I think you were doing what, create post, and then it has a
Yeah, I see. It's up a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
custom ACF field. So I think that that's only the blog. I think that's only posts. And so
Interesting.
to do the custom post types, right? So if I click back in here, I'm doing a custom API call to activity instead of post.
Yeah.
And then what it's doing is pulling in that first row. I think I skipped over about that's just the post ID. So you have to be able to identify the post ID in WordPress to be able to match it with the column, or at least that's
Gotcha.
how I did it. You know, there's probably a million ways to do this, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah. So what I'm seeing here is that the first thing that what do we call these tools? Would you classify Active Pieces as? Like an automation
Automation
API
tool.
tool, or
Yeah, I mean,
like
what do they call themselves? Let's see. AI powerhouse. They're leaning into
that's probably
that.
been changed recently. I'm sure
They
that was
literally has in the past week. They're about to do a big redesign. Yeah, I mean it's an automation. I mean, it's almost like a visual API builder, right? Because what it's doing, all it's doing is doing API calls. Like if I go back into Active Pieces, if there's not a trigger for the thing you want, you can't set up like just a REST API that I know of. Maybe you can, but what these are doing is just authenticating into Google Sheets, and I assume it's just a visual API builder in that sense. So I guess to tie it back to our our daily topic, I'll go with that. But yeah, it's an automation tool as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, Panda says visual automation tools. That makes sense. Yeah. So like when I would say like my first step into that realm was Zapier, and then you quickly realize that maybe Zapier is just the biggest. It gets kind of expensive. It's very limiting. Active Pieces seems like it can almost do more in some senses.
And it's
And
pay as you
there's
go. It's not
exactly.
You're not locked into a $20 a month plan that like is actually pretty limiting in what you get in terms of numbers of tasks. I mean, Zapier's just been around forever, right? But
Yeah.
so they're the big dog to take down. There's so many different ones. N8N you can self-host. Active Pieces you can self-host, both on a $6 a month server and have unlimited tasks, or you just pay as you go. You get 1,000 tasks for free, and then $1 per 1,000 tasks after that. Because the thing is that the compute power needed to run these is not really that high. There was a video that came out recently where a guy sets up his own Zapier basically with full functionality, and it costs six cents a month to
Hmm.
run or something like
That's
that.
crazy.
So yeah,
Yeah, sweet. Okay, yeah, Make also I remember Make was that like I think it was Integromat at one point or something. Yeah. So there's a ton of these. I think Brendan and I have kind of like I don't know, Brendan more so than me, but like I love Active Pieces so far, like what I've been able to kind of do with it here, just kind of tinkering around. But at the we'll say like again, like kind of at the initial level here, these visual builders are really good for people that either are beginning or just really really into it's visual, like I mean if you're not a developer by trade, then if you don't have that mindset, if you're not like constantly in like a development traditional development environment, these things are really good. So
mm-hmm.
I don't know, Brendan, like what are some of the things that you've been able to kind of obviously through your videos and stuff like that, but like do you think the one that I literally keep coming up with that is a strict like automated API situation is this YouTube video thing that
Yeah.
I keep telling you and everybody about, right? This idea where, and there's already plugins for this, but I want to do it in a way that's like more in the middle where I have that option. It's probably relatively straightforward once you have the pieces in the right spot. But the idea is we have a big library of YouTube videos, right? Like on our channels, we have like videos, we have lives, maybe we have shorts. We could get, it depends on how intricate you want to get with all that, but like you have different types of videos, you different categories and stuff. But I don't want to literally be copying and pasting every single title, description, and everything like that
Mm-hmm.
into my actual website. But I'd love to have a custom post type called videos and put it all on there. Each one of them have an archive, have a single for everyone and everything like that. But I just don't want to do all that work. So this is
Yeah.
totally out of laziness and hopefully a mark
There
on
we go.
efficiency. So what are we like? I mean, how do we think about that? I know you sent me some stuff too recently. You were doing it in that was Toddle that you did it in, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
so
and
it's
I
kind of
have sort
like
of that pulled up like just to show because it's so visual. But like in terms of getting that, again, we come back to this question like you want that data to be stored in your WordPress site in a custom post types, right? Rather than
mhm.
be just rendered on the page?
Well, let's actually, I think maybe we should stop there. And honestly, and chat, definitely let us know too as well. Like if, and we'll pop back over here for a quick second.
Sure. Yeah. I can stop share or whatever.
You can just leave it, I think, and I'll pull it back
Okay.
up. We're good here. But yeah, so I mean, like, let's think about that first, because I mean, if we're, I try when I try to dissect these bigger things, especially that I'm very new to, I try to do it in chunks, right? And like kind of like how a beginner would go about it, because I am a beginner. So like we talked about where you would start potentially and get your feet wet, maybe in the GUI thing. You could go more so deeper than that, but like because it's easy there. It's very visual. But the
Hmm.
next thing that you would have to think about is like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, do I need to do it? That's at least one question that you just brought up. Do I need to actually import the data, so to speak, like into the custom post types, or just do I just need to render the data on the site? Now that's really interesting because I think that it can go either way for certain cases. For instance, when I
Sure.
tried to do this a while ago, there's just, I mean, you could just download, you could just type in, you know, if you were starting completely green, you could just go to the plugins repository, type in YouTube embedder or something like that. And then you end up putting it, maybe you need an API key. I'm not 100% sure. Probably now you do. But at one point, I'm pretty sure you could just like put in like a channel ID and then it would
Hmm.
just render them in a grid. But again, it really depends on how deep you want to go, right? Because I don't
Right.
want that. I want the manipulatability or whatever of having it in a custom post type, interacting with that data the same way that I interact with everything else. You know, maybe if you wanted to throw it in like cards, like a grid with other cards and other data, you
Hmm.
know, you could do all that with bricks and other tools. So that's where my head's at. Can you think of a reason, or like either way that you would want to not import it, so to speak? Maybe this isn't. Maybe this
Yeah.
is a bad
No, it's,
example, but
no,
like,
that's a great example. It's a great example, and I have an answer somewhat just from where I'm at right now. Getting the page or the video title and the video itself in would probably be the easiest part. The hardest part, well, all of this it can get imported in when you want categories on your videos and you want tags or you want and then you want to filter that on the front end. If that's not in WordPress and you have to like if you're pulling that in from an API, that gets complicated very quickly. And I don't know exactly how you do that with the filters maybe built into bricks. Maybe you can use just grid builder and it's not as complicated as I'm making it sound. But the question really becomes, are you getting all that data into WordPress? If so, it sounds like probably so. You want to be able to categorize your videos within WordPress and right
yeah,
have a filter system and all that stuff. But if
yeah.
you're doing all that through API calls and all of like the little checkboxes are using input data from dynamic API calls, that's where I'm out of my depth.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would definitely. I'm definitely going to defer to Panda on some of this because I know he knows what he's talking about. It's something about API quota limitations here. That seems like definitely a concern. The first thing that came up again. There's trillions, I'm sure, of APIs or whatever, but specifically with the YouTube example, one of the first questions I asked you was like, to get more information was like, okay, how do I make a YouTube thing? Obviously, it's relatively straightforward to get a YouTube API key, but then like, does it cost like there's somebody's got to make money somewhere. Like, there's no way you're just like moving this data for no reason. And apparently, it's based on quota, right? It's like if you're serving millions and millions of people, at some
Yeah,
point
no,
they're
it's
going to
it's a
charge you.
really important question, right? Because a lot you just have to look at the API documentation. Google does charge. I think it's still pretty generous. I honestly have not looked at it in a while. I remember leaving it on one day and like a bunch of bots ran up a bill on my like map or something like
The
that. I don't know
maps
what
is
happened.
another one, a different example, but that's another one where it's like
Yeah,
I don't know how that one
because
works.
you have to restrict API. You want to be restrict the API usage and the keys and things like that. Like be careful with that stuff. And Google's APIs are, I would say, more complex than a lot of other ones I've looked at. A lot of APIs are free and open and only allow calls. They don't allow you to change the data. You can just
Right.
call it. So
Gotcha. Yeah. And in this case, I mean, again, using the YouTube one as the example, I don't need to be writing, so to speak, or changing anything back towards the YouTube side of things. But yeah, I think that would be really interesting. So to go back to it for a second, I'm gonna pseudo think about this, and let's just kind of have a chat about this. So like, yeah, the title. I feel like again, if we went into like N8N or active pieces and we did this, You could grab the title. You could probably grab the description. You could probably grab the thumbnail because I feel like I've been close with that. The issue, one of the issues, let's talk about the independent issues and maybe people can extrapolate this out into their other situations. If you were trying to grab the actual video file, I feel like that's going to be somewhat difficult because they probably don't want you to do that, so to speak. And honestly, in my case, like that's not part of my minimum viable product. I would just want the URL, so to speak, of
Yeah.
the video ID or whatever, so I could just embed. I have no problem like embedding the YouTube URL on the page with either the Bricks video element, Presto Player, like whatever.
Mhm.
That's not important. I don't need to like pull the thing off because where am I going to store that? I'd have to store it like externally or something. I'm not going to put that in, directly on the server that I have the site on. So that's one thing to consider. But then were we talking about categorization and such that's tougher? Like where do you expect the problems to be there?
I think if you are well, and we can kind of get into it in a little bit. I'll share this because I did this with YouTube. If you want to be able to show like filter your videos
Mm-hmm.
before they get to your site, like if you want to have people be able to do queries, you have to build the dynamic URL using whatever the user's input is on your site. So if they click Bricks videos, it's going to send that API call and modify whatever the call is to only send back Bricks videos from
Oh,
YouTube.
okay. Wait. So you're saying where we don't like I don't know the right term, but don't import it into a CPT? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's
Got it.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. So sorry
Got
if
it.
I answered the opposite of your question, but
No,
yeah,
it's all good.
that's
No.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just I mean, we're asking a ton of questions here. So like, no, I think that is really important to me, and I think in this case, I can't like. I don't know the pros and every single pro and con and like how much this would take to do these things, but I don't see a reason. I can't for the way that I'm specifically thinking about this. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't just import the stuff into CPT as an example,
Right.
because I want the literally the reason that I think this could work and could be kind of cool is that you would potentially have, this is a theory, total theory, from an SEO side of things, like an indexing of a site. Can you imagine if like all of the YouTube content, I don't know the full algorithm as well, but can you imagine if you had like 100 videos and if you could do this dynamically, because it already is being done sort of like when you make a YouTube video, if you go to the description, press show transcript, it's transcribed, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could take all of that text as well and put that on a single on your website for you could do it manually for sure, but if you could do it dynamically, it'd be sick. And you could put that on a single, and then Google would index that content. I'm not sure if
Yep.
it's smart enough to know that like you're kind of leveraging the YouTube video already and stuff like that because the YouTube video would be on the channel.
Oh,
But my
yeah.
thought is like I don't want to write anything. Okay, you guys know
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
gonna try to sit here and type all this shit. I'd much rather like talk for an hour, transcribe that, and then I feel like there would be some good content in there that might be like relatively,
Totally. No.
SEO
I think it's
valuable.
a good idea. So, I mean, we both watch Kevin Geary content
Yeah.
and we can't keep up with him, right? He makes a lot of content, but,
Yeah.
and I'll sometimes hear something and I'll want to go back later and find it. I've Googled something a couple times and it pulls up his blog single with the transcript.
Yep.
And so he has
Yep.
that. I don't know if he has it automated. I'll have to talk to him about that.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think it's a good idea to have that for sure. And I tried doing that. I need to play with that more. I have that flow where, as soon as I upload a YouTube video, as soon as it's done, it sends it out to, as a tweet and whatever, all that flow, but it doesn't have the transcript ready right away. So unless you're uploading the transcript immediately, that doesn't really help. But so you could put a delay in there, wait for it to generate the transcript. I think it's available afterwards, but yeah, that's something to check out. Like we could certainly set something like that up.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool because like comment from Panda for YouTube has 10,000 credits. Each one is 100 credits. So I think we're talking about the situation here where we don't actually import it. We're just rendering it like kind of
Yeah.
live. So
Right.
like if you were looking at it every single time, then there's either going to need to be like, again, some sort of like David's saying like caching, or you're going to have to like delay, do some weird stuff. Like, yeah, I mean,
Do pagination
yeah,
and not call everything at once too. Because
yeah,
I'll show you later, like when we look at the YouTube thing, it gets slow when it tries to load all the videos at once.
yeah. Yeah, interesting.
And then there's
Okay,
also
well,
like there's like debouncing with API
right,
calls too, where people are typing in, and if you don't want to call immediately, usually
exactly.
because you'll just
Yeah,
rack up a ton of API calls.
there's a lot to learn here. I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I would say I feel like this example, at least again, how I'm thinking about it, is relatively black and white that I probably want to import these as CPTs. If they weren't your videos, if you just wanted to call like other videos, I could totally see an example where rendering them live and not importing them would make sense as well. And I could also see a ton of other examples now that I'm thinking about it where rendering live definitely makes more sense and is probably the norm. Like for instance, like any sort of like weather data or some stuff like that that I feel like we've talked about. You're not going to like store that stuff on your site. But I guess in my case, I'm really talking about like a pretty straightforward example of I just need a automated way to bring those in and then bring them in and then check every so often. Preferably like when I upload a video, but like I guess you could have like a delay on it of like, I don't know, check every 30 minutes or something. And then as soon as I upload a new video, hopefully within 30 minutes, it gets moved over there. So I think
Yeah.
that's actually, I'm not going to say that's straightforward, but I think there's probably multiple ways to do that.
Yeah.
And that could definitely be done via like an N8N, like Panda said, or probably even an Active Pieces or something. Just got to play around with it because the funny thing is, I feel like that's a relatively like normal example of something
Hmm.
somebody would want to do, but I haven't found like it just doesn't seem like I can't believe it's not like a template in Active Pieces. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't. It seems like that's like something relatively straightforward, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm
There
just
aren't even a ton of tutorials on YouTube about it. Like
yeah
there's a lot of ones. They're pretty old by now. But yeah, it's interesting how this all
yeah
fits together. I think also like people are just very reliant on plugins and what
for
people have
sure.
already made, and people just like to copy paste. I know, so I certainly do.
Yeah, well, Paul WP Toots in the chat there. I mean, I just saw the new video today about building WordPress plugins, and I have a couple. You know, we've talked about it here in the other chat. There's a couple of videos that I have coming out here where I just decided to do that. I was just like, let me just go
Hmm.
into Claude and just start playing around with whatever. And again, is it perfect? I'm sure it's not, but it seems like it kind of like is cool that we have the opportunity now to take some of the knowledge that is already out there that has been amalgamated by these like LLMs and kind of do what we got to do there. So
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
and also just like jumping into it, like as you did, that was so cool that you were able to just generate a plugin and upload it to your site, and like author was Mark Szymanski and everything.
This
Like I was just like, wow, this is it's good to show that to people, because at the end of the day, it is literally just a file on your server. The Activate plugin thing is just like a UI for it.
yeah, 100%. Rob says, FYI, if I want real API access to the source data, I need and not CPT Google Sheet, $850 US. Okay, I don't know what that is, but it sounds a little expensive.
That
Interesting.
sounds very expensive. I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Okay.
I do know that you can turn Google Sheets into its own REST API and call it as a database too. So like that, I don't think it's that expensive. It's definitely not $850 a month, but he
Hmm.
could be talking about something else.
Yeah, have
But
to
yeah,
look into that.
certainly be careful about the limits. You can hit them.
Yeah.
I'll say like, that I brought up that one time. That was the one time I've ever had any issues with overages. A lot of the
Yeah.
limits are very generous for testing. The other thing I'll shout out real quick is I think it's called Rapid API,
Mm.
rapidapi.com. And they have access to a ton of different APIs. And the nice thing about it is you don't, I mean, there's downsides too, but the really nice thing when you're learning is that it uses your single API key for all those different services. So you don't have to go sign up for a Google API and a Slack API and all
Oh
Twitter
wow,
API. So you can share your key between all that. So
it's pretty sick.
I know we're covering a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff out there. It's and it's a wealth of knowledge. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
100%. Do you want to demo some more stuff here? I'll pull the screen back up here. I just want to hit on this David comment. Said Imran has called him out a couple times on that as well. I'm so reliant on plugins nowadays. I mean, I think that's definitely tangentially related to what we're talking about here because I think there's a couple things between like, should you like add a plugin? Should you try to custom dev a plugin yourself? I mean, guys, like seriously, we could talk about it today if you want, but like I'm gonna show you this video here. I'm gonna have these videos coming out as soon as this is done, definitely by tomorrow. And like I just went into Claude, I told it exactly what I wanted, and then it created like a not a snippet really. It was I mean initially it was kind of maybe a snippet, but then I fed it back in some Bricks Builder documentation before I knew about the Bricks Builder GPT, and then it just did it. Like it all it is like if you were to go back in the day, I feel like to Stack Overflow or something, and you saw a snippet, but your situation wasn't exactly like that. It just knows, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it knows kind of the syntax and what it needs to do, and it puts it like its developer hat on, and it's just like, all right, well, Mark wants this, and this is what this code says, so I'm just going to switch out the different things and kind of maybe create some things. And then the reason this is related to plugins, because obviously you could throw that in there's different ways, right? You could throw it in a WP code box or like a code snippets plugin or whatever. You could throw it in PHP dot functions, or literally the thing told me, hey, make this a custom plugin. Just download the PHP file, zip it up, put it and upload it. And I'm like, now I have a plugin. Like, it looks like I'm a plugin developer. I'm not, but it looks like.
Hey,
and I should probably put
author.
Claude in parentheses. I should put Claude in the parentheses of that author, because that is definitely not me doing that. But I'm just saying, like, I'm learning a lot. I hope you guys are learning too. And the interesting thing when we have this plugin debate is, I don't want to say it's like all necessarily just like a ton of plugins, because like some of the sites I've built have had plugins and I've learned how to like scale it back and everything, but it's literally just it's kind of it's a misnomer of a problem. It's just like the more code that you have on the website or the more things that you're doing there, it might get a little shitty, at times. So you just have to be careful of that. But I mean, I don't think there's inherently anything wrong there. It's just,
It's also, I mean, it's a good question. And I think I've heard you talk about it and others and I think Brian Cords had a post recently about how he says that it's okay to just have a bunch of single use plugins, right? I mean, you don't always want to just have one plugin that does everything either. So a lot of people prefer to just build, very limited functionality into, and have maybe 30 or 40 plugins. And, it's not really going to slow your site down that much. So.
Yeah. Just want to reiterate to David in there, I'm definitely not a plugin author. It's pretty funny though. Real quick as well, to Rob in the chat here, I'm giving full credit to Panda for this link that I just posted in there. There's a Bricks Builder GPT. So I literally just pulled it up. I haven't used it entirely yet, but it seems like that is kind of what you need though. Because again, in my very limited experience, it knows what to do, like Claude or GPT or whatever. It knows what to do until it reaches the the limit of its LLM like status, like its model, like wherever the timeline, the data set kind of cuts off.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like up creek because it doesn't have the information. But if you can just feed it the information, it's not, there's probably terminologies. It's not like it's smart enough, but it can put the pieces together and you can kind of like fine tune it, so to speak, in that. I just talked to, super side note, I just talked to James LePage over at WPAI doing Agent WP. I mean, that dude is younger than I am, which is rare in this community, it seems like. And he is like so unbelievably bright and smart in this AI stuff specifically. He's doing some cool stuff. You guys should definitely go check.
Every time I see it, it seems even better and better. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is pretty cool.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. But he gave me a super, super good crash course on this stuff. So I am just, I know just enough to be dangerous here right now. So
yeah.
So
here's a comment from Rob. My first GPT plugin imported 265,000 posts instead of 17. I had that with Active Pieces. One month I ran through all 200,000 tasks I have, uploading the same draft post over and over and over. That was fun.
It's nuts. It's crazy. RC, good to see you, brother. Thank you for being here. And then we got one from George here. Single-use plugins don't hurt your site. Yeah, I mean, I think so as well. Like, again, if you only have like, I'm speaking out of my depth here. Somebody can tell me, but like we're not in like 1990 here. If you put like a small snippet in there that you're only doing like one thing, and you wrote the code, or you kind of like can vet the code after you get it out of Claude and maybe run it by some people or whatever. Like if you know what it's doing, then it's all right. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think a lot of the stigma too there's bigger conversation to be had there. But I think a lot of the stigma is like when you didn't write the code, you don't know everything that's in there, you don't know what it's doing every single time. And again, like I've seen this in other environments when I was hosting, like all like the PHP, like I don't even know, but like all like the PHP logs and like the like different like maybe cron jobs or those types of things, they just get like, depending on what you do and like when you start combining different plugins and different stuff like that together, it just gets so bogged down so quickly depending on what you're doing there. So just be cognizant of it. We're never going to be like perfect.
Yeah,
Just gotta,
unless your single use plugin is like pulling in the entire font awesome library or something into your site, like you're gonna be
yeah,
fine.
yeah. So lots there. You ready to screen share on some stuff here? I can flip you back on. Go
Yeah,
here.
let's do it.
Let's do it.
So I know that we're in the WordPress community, of course, and we try to stay within that, but got to check out what else is growing in someone else's yard too sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a SaaS builder, I guess, whatever you want to call it, called Toddle. They did just announce recently they're going open source, and the reason I'm even bringing it up is I think it's worth creating an account and just checking out the free version. Everything I'm going to show you is in the free version, but I'm particularly interested in the API stuff, right? Also, shout out to Nick Arce. He's in the chat. He told me about Toddle. But they have
Nice.
some great docs here. And this first week of Toddle, there's 5 videos where they just sort of use it to build. They've built a weather app, right? They build that. I think I showed you some of these too, right? Like the iTunes
Mm-hmm.
search, a to-do app with an actual back end with users that you authenticate into Xano, and it builds like a little mini Notion. So you can do all these. You build anything on the free plan, really. There's obviously you can't have like a custom domain or whatever the limitations are, but you can also export these components and use them outside of Toddle. So there's
That's
a lot of
really
interesting
cool.
things.
It's a really
Yeah,
cool piece there.
yeah, yeah. They have a sort of export as web component feature. So they have components in Toddle that you can just once they're created. I don't think we'll get into any of that today, but that's another cool thing to check out. But they've got some good tutorials. I'll probably be making some too, just because it's useful to just see how this stuff works. So let me just open up one of these projects real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go here, and this is a back end whatever builder, right? There's my structure panel, very much like bricks. We have all of our CSS settings here, all right? But if I look at it on the front end, and I can like preview it here, right? And I can start typing in a country here, United States of America, and it'll pull in the country name, the official country name, the capital, population, all with API calls, right? So I can do what's another country? Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's Russia. You can do Italy, right? So Indonesia. So it's doing an API call. There's debouncing on here, but it's pulling in all this data um, from APIs, right? So I can just go and add a new API. But I've got country data here from restcountries.com. I think this is all just free. I don't have to authenticate. But if you look here, you can see how it says Indonesia, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't type that in to the API, but it's pulled in with a variable from a typing input. Okay, so I've got
Mm-hmm.
a typing input tied to this input form. Go to attributes, bind to variable. It's on the typing input. So anytime whatever the person is typing, it's going to go do the API call for that country. So it's changing the URL dynamically with an API call based on what the user is typing.
Wow. Okay. So, this is pretty
And I can
interesting.
see
All right.
here, anytime it does that, I get all this other information about whatever country it is, right? So I have the country in other languages, apparently, right? So, but then you have the native name, you get the official name, currency information, population information, all that good stuff from any country in the world. None of this data is in the site, right? This is all just dynamically called. And this is a
Got it.
free API. So as far as I know, as long as you're not abusing it with tons and tons of bot calls or whatever, you should be good.
So, all right. So I'm going to try to interpret this as a beginner. So that was you talked about the input there, right? But then if we try to build some parallels between like what we're actually seeing here and maybe what we're used to over in WordPress, obviously what we're looking at, let's back up for a second. What we're looking at here is kind of like a more or less I think maybe a component builder, but like can Toddle build websites? Like,
Yeah,
can you
yeah. So if I come here, I have pages.
got
I
it?
can add a new page, and they have components, actions, formulas, media library. There you can theme the website. Right now, it's just using, I think, Tailwind
Got it.
for
Okay.
right. So
So more or less, Toddle is just like a Webflow. I'm not saying it's exactly like them, but
like I have my
it has the ability.
breakpoints, right?
There you go. Okay, yeah. So you can build like different, you can build like a website basically. So then you come into this
And I can
level, and
zoom
if you're
out like Framer or Figma, right? So you can,
oh, sick.
yeah,
A lot going on here. So if you have something like this, each one of these like lines, basically like divs and the elements that you put in here, like the H1s, H2s, whatever, and the paragraphs things. It's like the structure panel on the left there. For anybody
Mhm.
that's familiar with like a Bricks or an Elementor or whatever, very similar in that sense. Like you just put an H1, you said search by country, and then to get the things to change, like the word capital is obviously static, but Jakarta here
Correct.
is a basically kind of like a dynamic tag, but in this case, it's pulling it from the API. So it was an API field, like
Yeah,
whatever's getting
exactly.
returned. Okay.
Exactly. So you're correct, and you can see it's a little bit different than Bricks, and I think I don't know, any other builder I've seen, in that the H1 has this little like text field below it, right? And so I
Hmm.
have a paragraph tag. It's basically acting like a span in a way, right? You're
Okay.
right, where capital is static, and then if I click on Jakarta, see this little FX formula
Yep.
symbol, right? So that is tied to this is doing the API call, right? So it's kind of a little
Hmm.
hard to see, but if I just let me just add like another, so I don't break this.
Yeah.
um, oh God, that one's complicated. Okay, let's not do that one. Let's do Jakarta. Um, but really, I'll just delete this really quick. So it would be, text when you add it, static, and
Right.
then you would click the formula thing, and just like the kind of like the drop down to select your dynamic data, you select, instead of a static text value, you can select here, and you get all your API data here. So I can select my country data. Then you have options here. So on loading, before the stuff is loading, you can do stuff with that, but we're not doing that. We just want to go see different data, right? So then we have the name of it, we have its independent, whatever its status, whether it's a UN member, right?
Hmm.
Currency that it uses, the capital. This is all just data that's in that API, right? And
Hmm.
is updated every year. So like stuff like population will increase. So like just to really quickly show that, I have a second API that's just strictly USA data, and that is a very similar API. Crap, wrong one. Very similar API where it's just using a different database, but it's doing an API call to the nation for United States, because I just have it manually in there. But the cool thing is that it has the year population data, so it's able to, you can call different parts of the API and dynamically change the chart. So when I look at it in the preview, or I have to go to a new tab, the height of these divs is set with which determines the height, the blue height, and it's set with a percentage. So I know it's a little complex, I guess, but
Hmm.
the way it's set is
I
using
can see
the
they're
actual
different.
data, right? And it looks a
Yeah.
little crappy style wise, but yeah, that's
Hmm.
I know
This
I'm
is
probably not
sick.
explaining it super well, but yeah, I mean, I really like that. Right, I can just have another API for just strictly US data. And again, this is what I saw in that little drop down for the object formula stuff here. This API data is the same stuff that we're seeing here, right? So it's just indented in. Uh, if you wanted to get multiple countries, right, you would take out Indonesia and it would list all the countries. Um, so, and then within that, there's like little indentations here that show, then there's further structure. So it's a fairly complex data structure with multiple nesting layers, but you're just able to call what you want.
Hmm.
So that was a quick one there. I have another like YouTube thing. We can, if you want to talk about this. I know I don't want to like overwhelm people either, but
No, I definitely no. This is fantastic, guys. If you have any questions or anything like that or ideas, definitely throw them in the chat. But I got some thoughts here. Like, and again, I always go to like kind of like the zoom out. It's just my personality, I suppose. But with something like this is pretty incredible that they've been able to what's going on is still complex to a degree. Like I feel like you could say it's like that, but like they've done a good job at like creating a UI around it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, if I'm understanding it correctly, this definitely, from everything I've seen here, takes out the middleman of the of 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 any sort of like. I mean, I don't necessarily know if Zapier would make sense to use. Probably wouldn't really necessarily make sense to use here because I don't know if you're really like doing an action, but like just the idea that you don't have to actually do any coding. This is completely like UI,
Yeah.
full API integration tool.
Yeah. And
And
it
it's
can,
like
and
built right in.
exactly. And it can be sort of as complex as you want. Like the tutorial on authentication was difficult because you have to store session cookies from the person who actually logs in with a correct password. And then you have to pass that data from the input form to the back end where I was using Xano, or you could use Supabase or Firebase or any sort of user, any sort of database really. But if you need to authenticate, stuff gets kind of complex and you have to, deal with session cookies. So debugging stuff kind of gets a little complex. Part of that is like, I'm new to this too. Like it could just be mostly or all user error.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to show it. Like, and I do suggest people go just uh, try out following some of the tutorials. Like the building a dynamic weather app is pretty simple, because when you come to Toddle and anytime you make add a new API, it pulls in the default API that they have, which is a weather API. So I can see here at San Diego, that's where I live, right? So it's pulled in my location data and all the cloud data, the pressure, the humidity, all that stuff, and it's from this other API from the Open Weather Map. So you can just go directly there and make your own account. But in Toddle, it comes built in, so you can kind of just get acquainted with it. You can show weekly weather, right? So instead of just showing one day or like 1 year of population data, you can show years or days of the week or whatever you want, really, depending on how your data is structured. So it opens up so much in how you think about where your data is, how you like longevity of data, like data integrity, like how important is this data to your company or your clients. Um, and yeah, I think to me, it's like it's like when you discover custom post types for the first time, and it just changes how you think about websites. So that was kind of like how this was for me.
Real quick in the chat here, it's unrelated, but Rob Cooper, anyone know how to stress test the site with visitors? I need to show a client their current site can handle a lot of concurrent users. I'm sure there's a million ways to do that. I think, is there like, it's called Screaming Frog or something is one of them? Is that, I don't know, something about maybe a frog, something with a frog, but also
I
I
know
think
that
I've used,
Screaming Frog is an SEO tool. They might have something like that. I don't know.
I think I've used loader.io if we're talking about the same thing there, Rob, just to hopefully kind of help there a little bit. Also, Panda says for WP comparison, when you type in the field, it runs a JS function that grabs the info on another website and inserts it into the page. Sort of like when WP shows you there is an update available. Interesting. Okay.
I'll have to read that again a couple of times.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard for me to pay attention.
Panda's way over my head. I got to get on his level.
That sounds really cool. Appreciate everyone's participation here.
Hell yeah, you guys are teaching us. We love it. Brennan, this has been great so far. What do we do? We want to move to the
you want to build some YouTube stuff real quick?
Let's build some shit, bro. Let's
Okay.
build some shit. Teach me the way.
So everyone can follow along. This is all free, right? I'm just gonna make a new project in Toddle. There's some templates that you can choose from, like weather. You can make a snake app. I can preview this and play Snake on my browser. This is all built in Toddle. So there's some cool stuff. There's a calculator, whatever. Their tutorials are probably better. We're just gonna start with a blank one, and I'm gonna call it Mark YouTube demo, I guess.
At a real high level, as you're setting this up, though, obviously we're in Toddle, so it's outside the thing. I think this is going to be a good example for like how this could work. But I think as we go through this, like we should, and maybe people in the chat know, like what we're doing here, how could we port that over to a WordPress environment? There's at least again, we could probably do like an N8N type thing. I need to check with Panda, but like on the high level, like yeah, have you used this yet?
I've used the free version, and it's pretty cool.
Is
The
it kind of the same thing as what Toddle has built in?
Yes,
Is it trying to do the same thing?
samples. It's kind of doing the same thing. This to me, this was much more code heavy. I think the pro version lets you do a lot more stuff. You can also import the data from the API. So like that would help you in the sense, like to get your YouTube data into an actual custom post type. So it lets you not just display, but also import, which is kind of cool.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, it seems like a really cool plugin. I probably will end up buying it and checking it out, but same idea where it's pulling in like live Bitcoin prices, right? Connect to the Binance API and just call this data, render it in the canvas. I don't know if this is all short codes. I don't think there's a direct integration with a builder. Again, I don't know exactly. Now, the dynamic short code plugin that we were talking about earlier, I believe has more integrations and more coming in the sense that it's not just short code to display. So I'll have to check that one out. And again, check out Dave Den's video about that. It's very cool because it is very similar to what we're checking out.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a look at what Toddle has to offer, and then
okay.
we can talk to Panda too.
And this shouldn't take too long, or at least
Okay.
if you have questions, let me know. But I won't lollygag. So a couple of things. I have it pulled up on another screen. Breaking the cardinal sin that you talked about. Don't prep before.
No
I'm just
prep.
going to change to a light mode. We have a div on the canvas. I'll add another div. And let's add another div. I don't know. I just want like an embed, I think. I tried it with the YouTube video. Couldn't get it to work right away, so I'm just going to use the embed. And let's get like a video title, right? Let's get like a heading 3. And where's my heading? Is it not visible? Text color.
We
My
are
heading's gone.
toddling.
Oh, I put it in the iframe. That's why I'm stupid. I don't like the dragging thing. I don't like any builder's dragging structure panel, to be honest, bricks included. Okay, so we don't have any data. We just have a heading and a video. But we can connect an API. So when I click on elements, the structure panel changes. If I click just sort of in this gray area off the page, it's like your page settings here. So I can create variables here, or I can connect to an API. So I do have a couple things because it's a lot of copy and pasting. So let me just start with the base URL for Google, or for I think all Google APIs, right? So that will connect to any Google API. We want to connect to the YouTube API, so I'll add a path to it. And you can see up here, it's changed the URL path. So it's just kind of like a nice, easy way to see your paths. We need version 3 of the API. And part of this is like I looked up some of the docs, right? So
Cheater. You're not allowed to look at docs.
And we're going to need to pass a key in here, which I have. Wait, that's not going to be a path, though. I think I'm good on the actual parameters here. Let me add a query parameter. So what I'm doing is just like building the URL out. You can see I started with the base URL, adding YouTube, version 3 of the API, and then we're going to do a search because we're going to search for your channel to find it.
Gotcha.
And so what we need to do first is, God, I have so many windows open. Such a disaster here. We need to pass the key in as a parameter, right? So I'm going to pass the key. Well, I have these saved, but key. And I could come out, I guess, and make a variable for the key and say like API key. And so I don't have to put it directly in there, or if the key changes or whatever, and then open up the API. And I can pass that, whatever that key value is going to be, in here. You don't have to do this. I could just type in the key. Maybe it's easier if I just don't overcomplicate it, Brendan. I'll take that out. Let's just add the key back as a static value, as a parameter. So I'm just pasting my YouTube API key. I will be deleting that after, so please do not go rack up a bunch of money.
Go.
Yeah, you have like a little bit of time to do it now. We're going to pass a couple other query parameters, and it's just because I know, again, I had to look up this part. I don't even know what this is doing, but you need the key value for part and snippet. And again, you can see it's doing part equals snippet, right? We also want to get your videos by, like, let's just get them by order, right? So we can order them by date. We're just passing these queries into the API call here. And you can see it's already working, or it's grabbing a bunch of random people's videos. So it's grabbing like
I never did
videos
anything
in
in
other
Chinese
languages.
or Japanese.
Yeah, because we haven't specified anything. It's just doing an API call basically. So let's specify a couple more parameters. Let's do your channel ID. And I know these. There's a lot of camel case, right? So it's like channel capital ID. And right now I will just paste in your channel ID. Again, I did my homework, so I know your channel ID.
This guy is prepared AF.
So now, now it's past my key and the channel number. So now if I scroll down, there's leveraging APIs in WordPress with yours truly. Then the next video, if I keep scrolling down, and you can see it's pulling in all that good data. There's the description of the video, your channel ID, your published date, the thumbnails, right? The medium, large, and small versions of it, the channel title, all that good stuff, right? So it's pulling in that. And then if I just like scroll up to the 0, that means it's the first one in the query. There's the second one, right? So there's experimenting with APIs and AI. That's the video we did earlier this week. So it is working. It is pulling in the data, no code written, just visual building, right? So we can do some other stuff with parameters, right? We can do, right now, it's probably just getting the first, you can see results per page 5. You have 144 total, but let's say we want to get more results. We can do max results and do like 25. And just like that, results per page is 25. We can change that to 50. And again, these values could be passed in. Any of these values can be passed in dynamically with that formula. So let's just, now that we have the API working, let's get it on the page real quick. So just like with Bricks, in fact, let me just name my API, get marks videos. Okay, and it's auto fetching those videos, which is all the time, right? So anytime you upload a new one, it's there. Now we need to get that data in here, right? So just like in Bricks or other dynamic builders that support dynamic data, you can pass dynamic values into text. So again, we're going to go to the formula, and we can, instead of passing in the static value, we'll go here and we'll click on our API and we'll go to data. And there's a lot of stuff in here. Again, Halsey mentioned earlier, YouTube APIs are like notoriously kind of complex, and there's a lot of stuff in there. Google's a big company. So you might have to do a little hunting and pecking in here until you find it, or read the docs a little more closely. But we want to get the item. Oh, you know what? I've done this wrong. We don't want to just get one item, right? We want to get, let me delete this. Sorry. We want to get all your videos. We don't want to just get one video. So let's do a repeater, right? Let's do a query loop essentially. So I'm going to go to attributes and show repeat. And what we want to repeat is the API call on the data. Okay. And probably on items, because then those are all your videos there, all 50 in that call or whatever. Okay. So those are in there. Let's actually see something now. Once I do that repeat formula, we're good to then, now we'll have these repeat items. So I can actually select the item and have that repeat. So we'll pick the, let me pull it up so I won't lose it. Item, snippet, and then title. This video title, right? So there's.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in this, oh shit.
So there's the title.
In this case right here, obviously we're still over in Toddle, and we have a surprise here that I just found out about, and I'll let you guys know in 2 minutes. But in this example right here in Toddle, the way that you're building this right now, are we still just rendering it though?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, because
just
see, I have
side,
just this one item here. It's like not a bunch of
right.
divs or whatever. Yeah.
So side note though, I mean, I'm sure the answer is yes, but like Toddle can do like a CPT equivalent, like a collection or something, if you wanted it to.
That's a good question. I think so. I don't actually know. I don't know. I think that maybe I don't see like collections here, but I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Interesting.
That'd be
Well, I mean,
cool.
again,
That'd be
we're
something to
we're
check out.
definitely looking at the one way to do this, because if you wanted to just show it specifically in Toddle, I mean, it's so cool how Toddle has this UI for all of this. I wish we had more of this in a bricks or a and obviously you can do it with dynamic shortcodes and things like that. I just wish we would really embrace this, other page builders and WordPress in general and stuff like that. Hopefully we continue to move in that direction. Max says, I also feel like to cache API calls when services are rate limited. Easy way to cache is just a raw dump into a file and use the modification date. That is a very, very clever way to do that.
Yeah. That is one of the benefits of APIs is that all that can be cached. If it's not changing, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just quickly get the other stuff in here, right? So we have the title working more or less. We have some broken stuff. I'll talk about that. But yeah, then we just come to the attribute for the iframe, and instead of that, whatever that source is there, we will pass in the data from the item, and we're going to need the snippet and we want the ID of the video. So maybe it's video ID, right? So that's not going to work though, right? Because it's just pulling in the URL here. God, see, it's loading all those videos. Let me just quickly change the API from 50 to like not 50 to like 15, yeah, because it won't flash as much, hopefully. So let's get the video in quickly. So again, this isn't super useful, right? It's just the ID, but here's again, power of Toddle. I can add actions in here. I can concatenate to add YouTube before it. Because so concatenate just takes, God, it's doing the API call so often.
They should really have like a turn down, just to turn it off.
I have auto fetch on because it's testing, so
I see.
That's me. But basically concatenate, right? I'm just going to add two pieces of text together. So youtube.com, and I believe it's /embed/. And then that will concatenate the final URL with the URL. There's our videos.
That's sick.
Isn't that cool? So I'm like manipulating data with some static data, just like to add to append URLs. But look, there you are. And
the power of Toddle.
And then Cooper. Really quick, just to show what else I'm talking about. See, the apostrophe is a dying breed in the English language. Okay, so I don't have that looks kind of busted. Let's check it out. Let's do a find and replace, or let's do replace all, and then it'll search that text string and search for. So I looked this up. This is the it's going to search for that. That's the whatever for the apostrophe, and we want to replace it with nothing. Or actually, we want to replace it with the apostrophe because we're not dying breed. There we go. Now I have the apostrophe in my name. And there was another one that was broken, the ampersand. So again, I can do replace all and search for the ampersand, which is that. And then we just want to replace it with the actual ampersand. And so now it should have worked.
Bruh.
Didn't it? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't look busted to me. So there we go. There's your YouTube API with three HTML elements. You can change the rendering just based on the query in the API. Show 40 videos. Now, again, wait a second to have your mind going. All right, I'm almost done.
Boy.
Almost done. And let me just, okay, we don't need 40. Okay. So, everyone with me still? You're with me?
But wait, there's more.
There's more. Okay. So we have, where did my videos go? Okay, they're still rendering. They're thinking about rendering. Now, what do we want to do in terms of making this a little bit more dynamic? Let me add an input form so that the user, right, can like search for something. Let me drag this to the top. There's our input form. Again, we're not worrying about styling, everyone. Sorry, it's ugly. Let's make another variable for channel ID. All right, and we're just going to pass in an empty variable for now. And then I'm going to come here and tie this variable to that channel ID variable. And it probably breaks everything. I don't know if it does. Let's see. Maybe not. Let's go here. And then if I type in your channel ID, does that work? Let me try a different channel ID. Let me try mine.
Oh, are you gonna query them based off of channel ID? Like
I can
variable
change
query?
it with a variable. Crap, I had this all working, and now let me pull up my demo here real quick. Input variable. Oh, I know. I don't think I tied it yet, did I? Yeah, I didn't tie it. Okay, I forgot the more important part, right? So if I click on that variable I just added, I can see that it changes, right? It's based off that user input. But now I need to open my API, and instead of a static channel ID in the query, I will change this to my channel ID input variable. So now it's going to go render those. It's going to render my videos. Right?
Jesus.
So now on the front end, I can take, let's see if Matt Medeiros is still here. I can render.
You got a little. It looked like it had a little pulsate to your
Here's
logo
all of
too.
the
I don't know if that had
WP
anything to
Minute
do.
ones. Yeah, there's a
That's,
little. It seems
I
like
don't know
a
what that
little.
is, but that's cool.
That's the latest one or something. I don't know what that is. But yeah, so there we go. It renders based off of user input. So it's building that dynamic URL in real time. There's another channel ID for Kevin Geary, right? So there's all of Kevin's videos.
That's pretty sick.
Now, but wait, there's one more thing.
Oh man.
So, and I'm almost done. I'm sorry. I'm covering a lot of stuff. It's so cool, though. I love this stuff.
Dude. I'm switching to Toddle. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, right? It's
Just
no,
kidding.
everyone, it's good to
Don't
teach
clip
yourself
that.
this stuff.
Don't clip that.
But okay, well, one more thing. Now I can let's say go to the we can just add another parameter of like a search query, and I can search for like all of the videos he has with you, with anyone.
Whoa.
So that will change the query, hopefully. Yeah, there's like emergency pod. There's all you, and there's some other one he had with another guy named Mark.
Is that pulling from like every field though? Because I don't think my name's in the title. Is it in like the description?
Yeah, I think it's pulling the description as well.
That's cool.
Without
I'm
me
sure you
needing
could
to
fine
set
tune that
up.
too. That's
I'm
awesome.
sure you could fine tune, and you could make that dynamic, right? I don't know how to. I didn't get that far, but there's probably like, is there like a search input? No, but you probably just like add another input and change it into a search input. Anyway, we don't have to get into that. I've covered a lot. I think I've shown what I wanted to show in the sense that it's, first of all, I wrote 0 lines of code to do any of this. Like, I love that. I can change it, and it will, it's a slow query. But anyway, it was working before. I don't know what I did.
No, I think this is sick. And I think it's really cool to kind of experiment in these. There's probably a larger conversation to be had, like whether like like what you could do with Toddle. I don't know, obviously exactly, but like just the fact that you could dive into this. Is this free? You said?
Yeah.
You can play around with it.
Yeah.
Like you could just dive around and play with this, and like get to understand kind of how the things work visually. And then if you want to take it to the next level, then you could do something maybe more code oriented, or maybe with a different platform or whatever. Like, so I do think there's immense value in this. And let's recap here. Everything that we did right here, we're not obviously storing any of this data. We're calling it every single time. We're doing it outside the scope of WordPress over in Toddle, but it gives us a good idea of me, especially as a beginner, to kind of understand like, the way that you have to interact with an API, so to speak, and like the way you can bring different things in and stuff like that. And I really, really hope that more page builders or WordPress core or whatever, like start building this stuff kind of in, because you could do a lot more cool stuff if you had a direct kind of like API UI, so to speak, like integration.
Right. And just being able to understand how variables get passed in and And again, like anything in here can be dynamic, right? So if you wanted like the max result, like if you're building a search query, you would tie this value to like what the person, like how many results they have typed in that they want or something like that. So really anything in here can be tied to user feedback and be really interactive. And yeah, really, again, it feels like probably an ad for Toddle at this point, but it's not meant to do that. It's really just I really do suggest you go make a free account. Anyone watching this can just go follow along. There's a couple other really cool YouTube videos that cover fun stuff, but also useful stuff like user authentication, like uploading files to a database. Very complex stuff at the end of the day, because you're passing different types of data and you have to like decrypt it, and like it's all sort of weird. So there's a lot of really simple things you can do with API, but again, you start to see how stuff gets built out, and yeah, you realize like most modern web apps are leveraging this type of technology. So
Dope. All right, Brendan, I appreciate that. I'm sure you have more stuff we can talk about that. Here's the thing, though. Not just yet. I got a surprise for you.
Okay.
Surprise for everyone. Okay, so I'm gonna give you the backstory. I like made some videos and stuff like that, and like we were talking about Panda in the chat there, definitely knows a ton of stuff. And as we're demoing some of these things, he's willing to come on here and show us more about the WordPress side of things specifically too, because he has this built in N8N. So I'm gonna bring him in,
awesome,
and we're gonna be what's up?
Hey, welcome.
Oh,
sorry about that. Hey, Brendan. Good, yeah. Hey, Mark.
What's up?
I'm great, if a little stressed, because like a lot of first live stream, English is not my native language, so
no, you're good.
Apologies in advance.
No, you're absolutely good, man.
Where are you calling in
hopping on.
Well, yeah, and you were saying I know a lot. I don't feel like I know a lot. I'm very much a student of all this, but it's just fascinating to me, much like it seems to be for the both of you. And so, yeah, that's something I jumped into a few months back, because initially I was a designer purely. And like I got frustrated by the fact I wasn't really able to give life to what I was designing and to make it concrete. And so I started to learn a little about front-end development, and that led me to a little of the back end and stuff like that. And so I just want, for everything I'm about to share, I just want to credit Simon from Webnestify, who is in the Inner Circle community, and also has a great YouTube channel. Because basically everything I'm about to show you, I couldn't have done without him and his tutorials. So yeah, just to put it out there.
Yeah, he's super helpful. I'm glad that you're like an intermediary, because he's been around and has so much good stuff. So let's check out what you've learned.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so let's do this. Basically, when I saw your videos, I decided to create a little install on InstaWP to try and see if it was possible to actually create what Mark was talking about. And hopefully you can see my screen right now.
We can.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, this is just a standard WordPress install. Like I have a few plugins in there, but nothing which has to do with automation or APIs or anything like that. And basically what I was able to do is bring in all of the videos from Mark's channel in there and have them render on the page like their embeds. And so it's a different scenario from Toddle, because this is not, it's live rendering in the sense that the video is hosted in YouTube, but this is an iframe, basically. And it creates the iframe based on data that is stored on this WordPress website, not live like you were doing, Brendan, with Toddle. And basically the way I arrived at this is just by playing with the WordPress REST API. because these days, by default, if you go to your WordPress like address and add WP JSON at the end of it, you'll get a JSON object that is really like just a long string of text, and hopefully it's big enough to see. And if you install, so I'm using a little Chrome extension here that I found just on the Chrome extension store to be able to display it in a nicer way. But you can dig in there to find a ton of data basically about your site, and you have specific routes that you can access. So for example, wp/v2/posts is going to be all of your posts. And like it's just a long list, and each of those objects is a post with a ton of data in there. And basically that's the same thing you were doing, Brendan, with I think it was Active Pieces earlier.
Yeah.
And what you can do, so just reading this API, you can do that without being authenticated to the website.
Right.
But you can also write to it, and it's actually fairly easy. You just have to create an application password by going to your user, and you have it right there. Set new password, and you can then use
Or
that.
is it the one below? Is it the one below it? The
Yes,
application. Yeah.
absolutely.
I've seen this. I don't know if this is newer when they kind of started doing all the REST API stuff, but yeah, I've never used it.
It's sort of new. I don't know, at least a few months, but yeah.
Do you know if there's any
definitely
advantage to, like, I didn't really get into it in this video, but I just used the basic JSON authentication plugin, and I just used my normal WordPress password. But
Yeah.
I just was curious if you knew anything, like if that's bad to do.
Well, basically, so again, I'm not an expert, but I tend to follow the principle of least privilege. And so I wouldn't be comfortable giving my entire password to an external application.
Totally. Same.
And basically, this reduces the scope of what you're giving access to. And it's like when you create it, you can display the secret, obviously, but afterwards you can't. So in this sense, it's sort of more secure than using your global password, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
But I probably wouldn't be like the authoritative person to.
But I'm gonna get in the habit of doing it this way. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. And so yeah, just to add on that, there's a free plugin that is called Unbloater that allows you to disable a bunch of stuff by default in WordPress, and I'm using it among other things to limit the creation of application passwords to administrator level users, because obviously if you have other users, you wouldn't want them to be able to do that. But long story short, this is what you can use to actually write to this API. And so if you start to play with tools such as Postman, for example, which is very similar to Rapid API that was mentioned earlier, you can actually send requests like over the network to your website to read data or to post data. And so just to give you an example, if I go back to the front end of the website and I look at the posts, well, the last one was Hello Marcus Blocks, and I could create a new one just by sending a call to this endpoint of the API. So for example, let's say this is, I don't know, like, hi, YouTube. And I'm just going to send that. And since it's authenticated with the the application password I created, if I go back to the website and refresh the page, and of course it doesn't work when I'm live. Well,
But
It
I
looked like it
understand what you're
worked.
saying, though.
Yeah, you didn't get any errors from Postman. It looked like it looks.
yes, absolutely.
Looks like it's good.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, I know what it is.
Oh, it's draft.
Yes, absolutely. So you can, once again, set other keys. And so this would be the status key and publish.
There you go.
And so I'm using Postman to do that, but you could do it from basically any tool that allows you to send calls over the network. And this is the case for all the visual automation tools we were talking about earlier, such as N8N. And the reason I'm personally using this is because sometimes I ran into a situation where I was limited by what a tool was giving me as options. And N8N doesn't limit you this way, because if, for example, if you don't find what you want in the default WordPress node, well, you can just send an HTTP request to a custom endpoint or with a custom data package, basically, to create exactly what you want.
Wow.
So to go back to the broader picture of bringing like automatically YouTube videos from a channel to a WordPress website, the way I went about it is basically that I have here a trigger that is running every 30 minutes because this is the most fundamental block of these apps is you have a trigger that starts the thing, and then you have actions, and the trigger can be a bunch of things, but in this case it's just running every 30 minutes, and it's going to query the YouTube API exactly like you were doing, Brendan, with Toddle, to get all the videos from Mark's channel. And then it's filtering out the shorts because by default it gives you that. But just by checking that the description isn't empty, because shorts do have an empty description. And then, so I don't know if I'll do a good job of explaining this, but basically I'm comparing here the results of this action with what I previously recorded in an Airtable base.
Okay.
And essentially this is like a fancy Google Sheet, if you will. And for the ones that aren't matching, meaning they're new items, I write them to the base.
And really quick, so if I understand, what you're doing there is otherwise it would try and upload videos that already exist.
Exactly.
Because it's doing that call every 30 minutes.
Exactly.
Do you think we
So,
could?
so,
do you
so
think-
just really quick. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is more from my own brain, so I understand.
Yeah.
The trigger I showed also was different, right? Because the trigger I showed was whenever a YouTube video is added, it calls. So it's always going to do new videos. But yours is actually pretty interesting though too, because it's just doing that call more often.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So is it because
initially,
you didn't have a trigger for YouTube? Is it because you wanted to have more control, or
a few reasons. First, I wasn't able to find a trigger for YouTube in the stock N8N options. It was
and you
also
solved the problem though, so that's important.
Absolutely. This is what I really like about it. It's very flexible, and you extremely rarely run into a situation where you baked into a corner and you're stuck. You very often have ways to circumvent any issues that you might encounter. And so one reason was this. And the other was, I was just thinking about if for some reason this like this automation doesn't run when the video is published, we still want to have it be picked up.
Yeah, and that's
And
important
so,
because I have that problem. So that's perfect right there.
yeah,
That's the limitations of some of these triggers are exactly like that, where you need to think about it sort of more holistically. So that's a really good point.
yeah, and I think it makes more sense as well. Though you do have to be mindful, because initially I tried running it every 5 minutes, and that is why I know there is a limit to the quota of YouTube's API. But yeah, basically, I break it up into smaller chunks, and this only gets the videos and records them into a base. But the second one, actually, so on this one, I have a trigger that is automated when a record is created on the base. It's going to trigger all of this. And what it does is, once again, it grabs the videos from the base. And essentially, I'm just storing like the essential data that I absolutely need to post in there. So obviously not the video files themselves, but it's the video ID, the title, and a few things like that. And once again, I filter them because I don't want to re-import videos that I've previously imported. So in my base, I just have a little state machine, if you will, that is either imported or not imported. And so I only allow the ones that haven't been imported yet. And then I'm just modifying the fields a bit, notably because the problem you run into with Toddle, Brendan, with the ampersand that was rendered as an HTML entity, you get those problems as well. And also, I had some problems because basically what you return here is a JSON object. So it looks like this. And the way they're defined is they start and end with quotes. So if you have quotes in the middle, you have to escape them with an anti-slash, or I think it's backslash in English.
Yeah.
And you do have to be mindful of that. And that was initially an obstacle I couldn't get past. But through the magic of ChatGPT, I was able to write a very basic function to get the description and transform it. And then I'm sending it back to the website, much like I did in Postman. This is the exact same call. It just has more data in it, but you can recognize title, status, etc. And I'm inserting some variables in there that are the infos I grabbed from the Airtable base. And yep, that's it. And the final step is just to record the fact that this specific video has been imported. So I want to update my base accordingly, so the next time it's not imported again. But yeah, that's
cool.
That's it. And as you've probably seen, it's not entirely a no-code tool. It's more of a low-code tool. But it does mean that when you would be stuck with much of the alternatives, you can find solutions. So yeah, that's what I really like about it. And that's it. If you have any question, or obviously I only have one screen, so I can't see the chat right now, but if there's anything I can answer, or I don't know.
Well, you're getting high praise from the AI king himself, Max Zeibel. Nice surprise guest, great presentation. Please come back for more. So thank you so much for everything so far, but we definitely have some more questions for this because this is sick as hell.
My pleasure. I'm going to come back here. Sorry about this. Okay,
Oh, good.
and
There we go.
I should be back.
Perfect.
But yeah, that's about it.
Nice.
Yeah, they're very
Brendan,
cool. I
did you
mean,
have a question?
I like that you've got your combination of very low code, and then as you need it, you can just insert a little here and get some help from Chat GPT as needed, stuff like that. So you're not completely limited to just a UI, because that was something I was talking about with Mark a couple days ago. Was the UIs are great, but once you have that, you've committed to putting every feature in there that you can't be hiding things or leave things out. So I like that.
Absolutely. And I also feel like at some point, well, much like when we have with CSS, like the UI can be great, but at some point, to get more control or to do the thing in a most efficient way, sometimes you have to get your hands a little dirty. And yeah, this kind of tool allows you to do that. So
And I'll also say, from a meta sense, you are a great presenter and speak very well and explain things clearly. And I'm very jealous of you for that. So thank you.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much.
So I think we need to take a quick step back because I don't think we properly introduced you. But good, is it Jeremy? I don't want to mispronounce it now.
It is Jeremy.
Let us know where you're. Where we get some chats that are asking where you're kind of coming in from and everything like that. So and just kind of give us a little bit of your background. I know you said you came from the kind of the designer realm, but I want to give you the
Absolutely.
spotlight here for sure.
Okay, so the short version. I followed some applied art studies. I was very frustrated by the content, notably because, well, I live in France, which is a wonderful country, but there tends to be a vision of design that is slightly different, in my experience, at least, or my perception of it. I could be absolutely wrong, but that's just my impression, that it is art in service of like business. And I never really saw it this way. I was much more interested in coming up with creative solutions to business problems in a concrete way. So I just started to learn on my own and just started going down the rabbit hole, if you will. And that's how I started to learn a little about CSS and then JavaScript, because I felt limited by what I could do without interactions. And then from one thing to the next, I just jumped into a few tools. But as I said at the beginning of this presentation, I very much consider myself a student of it all, not a master, at least not yet. I
We
hope
all
to be
are.
one day.
We're all
But
students.
yeah, that's about it for my background. And these days I work as a designer, developer, and brand advisor, I guess, for small and medium businesses in France and in the US. And yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Are you on your
Awesome.
own or do you work for like another company?
No, I'm a freelance.
Beautiful. Love it.
And did
Sweet.
I might have missed it. Did you say you do use WordPress regularly, or are you not?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
sorry, I didn't spoke at all about this. I don't use it exclusively, but it's like 90 to 95,
Cool.
percent of the websites I build. So yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting. And I know we're connected in the automatic CSS community there. That's how we got connected. Like, is that your current, when you are using WordPress, maybe there's different stacks. What would you say your predominant stack is? Is it like a bricks ACSS or are you trying different
Well,
things?
whoa, that's like an entire different live stream. But well, to put it simply, I very much resonated with some of the videos you have on your channel, Mark, where you say that maybe you need different stacks depending on the situation or the client. And I find myself building mostly with bricks these days. But for some projects, I go back to Gutenberg and block packages. So it
Gotcha.
very much depends on on what's needed really on this
For sure.
situation.
Gotcha. Yeah. We got some questions here. Toby says, will you please share the N8N template, please? I mean, you might have to sell that for some big money. I don't know. That's a lot of work there.
No, I'll share it with pleasure. I just need to make sure I remove every like API key
Yeah.
or everything before.
For
But yeah, sure. Because I didn't speak about this, but N8N allows you to download an entire workflow and to like import it. So that's very convenient. But yeah, sure. I mean, I don't really have like my website is in shambles these days, and I don't really have a platform, but we can probably organize something to make it available
For
in
sure. I
either
can,
one of
just
your
let me
websites.
know and I can,
Yeah,
let me know and I can link it in the description here. Or in like a comment or something like that too, like once we have it. So yeah, Toby,
yeah,
absolutely.
sure.
Anybody that
We
wants
can
that,
find a way.
definitely awesome. Had another thought there. Can we go back to it for a second? We don't have to necessarily show it right
Absolutely.
now, but like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because we have some comments and I know we have people that are different levels of like actually integrating these things. And you know, while we have you, Jeremy, you're so insightful on this part of it where like the code kind of meets the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and everything. And we had a comment here from Rob McDonald. So at a high level, using this method, we could post to WordPress CBT with data from a Google Sheet and check to see if the post exists, and if not, add the post. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so the answer is yes. And I mean, the answer is we can do a lot of different things. But specifically, I want to kind of dissect just a couple of the decisions you made. So you decided to use Airtable rather than maybe like people's first thought. I mean, I've used Airtable and it's very powerful, but rather than like Google Sheets, was there did you try Google Sheets? Did you think that would not work? Was there problems there?
No, I think it would have worked. The
Okay.
reason I made this choice is just because, in my experience, well, I think it was Paul from WP that was sharing earlier that Google products and APIs tend to be very complicated, and I absolutely agree with that.
Especially sheets.
Yeah. So that was one part of the equation. The other was I I tend to experiment a lot, and sometimes you have to take measures against your own mistakes. And I really didn't want to risk deleting the sheets in my Google Drive. So that's why I made a table in Airtable. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these tools are so flexible that you really have a ton of choice in what you want to use. And it also depends about stuff like data ownership and like the privacy laws you're subjected to and things like that. For example, if I was building something like that for a European client, I probably wouldn't use neither Google Sheets nor Airtable because like I don't want to expose a client to the possible legal ramifications, and I'm not qualified to know what's risky or not. So I would, for example, host a product on a server that can do the same thing. There are a few options. The one I've used in the past was NoCodeDB, and basically it functions exactly the same. So you really get a ton of flexibility in what, like, the pieces of the puzzle that you want to use, and you aren't limited to either a Airtable or Google Sheet or any other specific solution.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. We had a question. I think you literally read 56K's mind here. If you would like to self-host something like Airtable, what is your favorite solution? Pocket-based, Directus, something else? So you said NoCodeDB is kind of similar. You could probably do something kind of there.
Absolutely. That would be a solution. I don't have experience with Directus, but Pocket Base you probably could as well. Mark, you were mentioning earlier Firebase. That could work as well. Basically, the only thing we want to do is store a little bit of data. So there are lots of solutions on the market that allow you to do that.
See, like that was the first thing that I kind of thought of when I was looking at the flow there. Totally understand why we're using Airtable or something like that. Do you think there's a way where we could put that with more within the system though? Meaning, like, could you have a field that was like ID in your WordPress website that was just, it sets an ID for the video or something like that dynamically every single time, and then you're able to check based on that and get rid of like the extra table sense, like the middleman, so to speak? I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think, because
I've never done it, but I feel like we could. Actually, I'm already storing the video ID as a custom field in there. So I just used Airtable because I had some experience with that. But ultimately, you could use a first HTTP request to read from your website's REST API instead of Airtable, and a second one to write to it. That would absolutely be a solution, and arguably a better one, not only because you remove a moving piece, basically, but also because that way you would be always ensured that the data you compare against is the most up-to-date. Because, for example, in my little setup here, if I was to remove the videos from the website, the Airtable base doesn't get updated. So it doesn't know that the way the videos aren't in there anymore. Whereas just by using WordPress, it would. So yeah, that would be a better option, actually.
There's definitely more than one way to do things, for sure. And I mean, like, that's like Brendan and you guys were going back and forth with like the trigger situation too. I've definitely had times where I've tried to do stuff like this in the past and the triggers just didn't trigger for some reason, because you're really relying on like the Zapier. It was more so in the Zapier days, not too much in the Active Pieces days, but it's like why isn't this running? And then it's like it could be a litany of things, because you're at their mercy, especially when you're on like the free plans and stuff. So I do like the idea of trying to force it to run rather than rely on like the stock trigger. I think that makes sense. The one thing that I'm sure if I just looked at it for longer, I would understand is like right now, let's paint a situation, right, where we have that template, we have that flow that you've created, Jeremy, and we have 100 videos like on our YouTube channel right now, and we have none in our CPT. When we start that right now, is it going to import all of them? It's going to import all of them. That's the way it has, right? And then the second time it runs, it's going to check to see if there's videos. And if there's no new videos, it's not going to run. And then the third time, it's going to check. It's going to see one new video, and then it's going to just add the first one, right? So it's always going to be updated, if I'm understanding the flow correctly, right? Like you don't have to do something separate to get them all in at first.
No, absolutely. The way I built it works exactly as you described. The first time it's going to run, it's going to compare against an empty set. And so it's going to say, oh, yeah, we do need to import all of those. But the subsequent times, it's only going to import the new ones. And that's probably the way you'd want to do it, since you don't want multiple copies of your videos in the website.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I don't know if N8N has this, but some other automation tools have a loop thing as well, where you can have it. You can say, like, for instance, I was doing one where I was doing one post every minute it was uploading. That's great. But if you configure a loop, you can say run it on an array of posts, and it'll do all of them. And you could probably crash your server that way. So be careful with that. But yeah, so
156,000 loops.
Yeah, no, if you're not careful with them, it'll duplicate. But it can be very powerful for doing a bunch of things all at once, or looping over like a list of categories or something like that, or just your posts. So
absolutely. And that's funny because even though those are functions of N8N and like visual functions, there are native nodes for this. We go back to this idea of low code instead of no code, because it's much easier to understand the way it's going to iterate over an ensemble of posts or videos or anything like that. If you have just a tiny bit of experience with the concept of a function or a loop in code, like even if it's just super basic, you've just watched one video on YouTube about JavaScript or something.
Or even if you understand loops and bricks, it's a very similar concept, right?
Yeah, exactly. The query loop in Bricks is exactly the same. And so, yes, that's something to be mindful of, because if you're not, you can have surprises. But at the same time, you get a great amount of control over it. The one thing I wish was perhaps a bit different in NA10, or perhaps that is just my lack of experience with like the whole topic, but the way I've structured my flow right now isn't efficient in that regard. And if that's okay, I'm just going to share my screen again to demonstrate it real quick, because it's going to be a bit abstract otherwise.
Definitely.
It's important to think about that, because like once you start building a couple flows, you're like, wow, I could do this differently, and like this might be a little better, and yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And well, as I've said, for example, for the description, I didn't initially use this transformation node. It's just I wasn't able to make it work, and by removing it from the flow, I realized this was the problem. So yeah, you do have to iterate over it and to make it better progressively. But yeah, just to go back to this idea of loop, the way the loops work by default in N8 is that it's going to run a loop for each item on each node. So for example, if it was to read on that node that it needs to import, I don't know, like 10 videos, it's going to run this node 10 times and then this one 10 times, etc. Versus running all of them for each item and then going back to this part. And you can create it so that it functions this way, because you have a lot of options in the pre-built nodes, and you have nodes especially to control your flow. For example, this loop or merge nodes, and you also have this data transformation category, which allows you to aggregate several items into a single array, basically a list, or to where is it? Here it is. To break up a list into individual elements. And yeah, there's a lot in
data
there.
conversion too, like convert to file, edit images. Wow, this is very powerful.
Yeah, you can do basically anything. And so if you're really deep into this space and you're like more of a developer or something like that, one thing that is mind-blowing to me, but I have yet to try it, is in the code node, you can write JavaScript or you can write Python, which means potentially you could use it even to create files or to grab files and do something with them. So it seems to me like the possibilities are truly endless, basically. Maybe there's some kind of limitation I'm not seeing at my level, but yeah.
And just to give a little perspective, like I like, for me, I was really new to this just even a few months ago. Do you feel like you have just by using like a little visual builder, but also having the code capability, do you feel like you've learned a lot pretty quickly? Do you watch a lot of tutorials? Did you already know some of this stuff before?
So yes to all of that. No, the fact is, when I tend to get very passionate about stuff that interests me. And so when I started stumbling upon this whole world, I didn't want to feel frustrated by my lack of knowledge. So I watched a lot of tutorials. I I tried to follow a rather wonderful series of videos on YouTube that is called, oh, sorry, it seems to elude me right now, CS50. That is absolutely free and is shared by Harvard, I think it is. And like it's definitely hardcore stuff for someone who isn't a developer initially. Um, and a lot of it went over my head for sure, but it made me comfortable with experimenting basically. And if if someone watching this is inspired, I would highly encourage you to just try. Um, and not necessarily with N8 exclusively, but any one of those tools. Just try to build a few things and don't start being too ambitious because it's easy to get discouraged. And even like when I was building this, at some point I was hitting my head against the wall, and I was like, just this is so frustrating. Why isn't it working? But a very basic way to do this could be just to grab a manual trigger and to grab something. It could be, for example, a Google Sheet, or it could be an Airtable base, or any one of these applications, and just build yourself a very basic flow that you trigger manually, and you'll have to learn how to add your credentials in there, which is a whole thing in and of itself. But yeah, it can be a wonderful way just to see what it does. And so, for example,
Definitely.
if I trigger this one manually, I'm gonna get a result here that basically just tells me that yes, it's found my base. So this is like super basic, and it doesn't really have a practical application, but it's a building block. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And part of it, right. I mean, you kind of have to retrain your brain or, well, train it the first time to just sort of think differently about how parts connect together. And I totally agree with you that just getting in there and building something, even if it doesn't work right away, just start testing little things. You will get to the more complex stuff more quickly than you think, because it gets deep. It's a deep pool that we're looking at here, but the shallow end is great. The water's amazing. Everyone should try it out.
Absolutely. And that's also the value of
Holy hell.
having tools that, like, I wouldn't recommend anyone try this just straight up hardcore by writing code from the get-go. This is going to be too overwhelming. But
Yeah.
if you can leverage what those tools and those UIs do for you and just complement them when you need to with a little bit of code or stuff like that, you can go very, very far. Especially if you get involved in those communities. I know, for example, that Active Pieces have a lot of pre-built automations. That is the case for Make as well. N8, the forum is very active, and there are a bunch of pre-built workflows in there as well. And pretty much all of them have great YouTube channels these days with tutorials and talks and live sessions and stuff like that. So yeah, just get in there and
And
try something.
more or less all these tools are kind of doing the same thing. So if you just sort of pick one that you connect with the UI, that might even be the more important part. And now
Yes.
you should think about price and all that stuff too. I mean, it's a decision you got to make, but if you understand the logic of one of these tools, you're gonna do well in the other ones.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think that these are anything. Zapier, Active Pieces, N8N. I'm definitely trying N8N now, but I definitely think all of them are really good. Like I was saying when Brendan was trying Toddle, like it doesn't matter what you start with. If you don't understand how these things work, and like you watch a video like this, you watch Jeremy like do the demo of this, or Brendan do the demo of Toddle, and you want to dive in, you got to start here because it's available. It's so easy to like just make these connections with these tools you're already playing with, like Airtable or whatever, and then you could just start literally in a little playground almost like this and just see what happens. The question that I would have, and I'm not sure if this is probably outside the scope of us, but I compared this to what I was doing with Claude the other day, and I'm like, this is awesome. I love this, but I'm always thinking like, is there a way to bring it even more, like to make it more concise, make it less so to speak, like third party, for lack of a better term, because this obviously all works. I'm just wondering, like, and this is again probably a really loaded question. What would it take to create something like this into like a little custom plugin that could run right on your website rather than using like an N8N or whatever? And I don't have the answer to that question, but it would probably start with me going to Claude and just typing in, "Yo, how do I do something like this?" And yeah, it's just that's just another. I feel like that's even the next step after that. It's kind of interesting to think about. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
Well, I can try and answer that if you want, but
For sure, yeah.
The way I see it, and again, my knowledge is limited, I may be wrong, but the way I see it is I wouldn't want to use a tool that is very removed from the website or from the data. But the reason I quite like working this way with N8N is because ultimately those are HTTP requests to a core WordPress API, and under the hood, a number of plugins, even not related to automation, but like blog plugins, notably, do the same thing to interact with the website. They interact with the REST API. So I feel comfortable that it's native enough. If you want to go like one level down and have your WordPress website take care of this, you could. I found a great video on this on YouTube by, I think it was by Alex Young from the channel WP Casts, and it's maybe a bit dated, but I guess it will still work in principle. It was just outside of my area of knowledge because we are talking about like writing PHP to interact with the core of WordPress, and I don't feel like I have the necessary expertise, I guess, to do that without creating some sort of situation, be that breaking the site, corrupting the database, creating a security issue, something like that. So that's the reason I tend to prefer N8N currently. But it goes back to use what's available to you. If you ask me the same question in a few years, maybe my answer will be completely different. It's just that currently, with my current level of knowledge and the tools at my disposal, that seems to be the best solution for me. And ultimately, I think that's the way you should answer those questions. But again, you have a lot of things to take into account. For example, to do that for a client, you'd have to consider the implications for them. It's not really the same doing it on a taste website, just
For sure.
as a little game, and to base a business like process on the same thing. So yeah, definitely a lot of things to consider, and that will guide you to the right solution.
Yeah. And some of it also is like, there's sort of best practices, so to speak. And those are, they've been tried and true. But so much of this stuff is changing. And like this whole idea of low code, I don't really like the term no code, but these things are getting to the point where yeah, there might be like a better or tried and true way of doing it, but it's not necessarily bad. Now, there's probably implications, right, that we don't know about yet, right? But it's just something to keep in mind. Like, you don't always have to just, you're not going to find the answer on Stack Overflow necessarily to this, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting situation. We had 56K in the chat here say, hey, we old people needed to learn this by writing code and trial and error. No tools like this. And that, I mean, again, we're very fortunate that we have those things nowadays. And you know, but I think at the same time we're always trying to like think about how they're doing it. And I mean, again, regardless, if you, I'll echo it for like the third time now. Like if you're doing stuff in there and you're a critical thinker and you're like a tinkerer, at some point I feel like you're going to be able to understand. Like you could go look at the code, and obviously even if you're not a developer, you're going to be way more. You can understand it a lot more because you're like, oh, I'm seeing things that are similar that what I was entering or dealing with over here. If you had like, you know, an actual script or custom plugin or even just like, you know, whatever, like you kind of feel it out a little bit more. Again, it's what happened to me with the Claude situation. I just typed some stuff in and then I looked at the docs and I was like, oh, there's, you know, there's some similarities here. I'm seeing that type of thing kind of play out on a much different scale than what I'm used to on, you know, just like a total like, you know, GUI experience, which is, there's huge value in that though. It's amazing. Also want to highlight this comment to you, Jeremy, here. Thank you so much for the appearance. This is a nice conversation. I have to leave. Thank you all. 56K, thank you for being here.
Yes.
Jeremy, thank you for jumping on here, bro. I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm actually gonna have to go as well.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry,
think we're
it's
gonna
just a bit late here in France, but
Okay.
Thanks for jumping in. That was really cool. I mean,
Yeah,
this is part of the reason we have these conversations, right? Or
Hell
that's
yeah.
why I show up.
well,
Learn more from other people.
Hell
absolutely. And I feel like I've learned a bunch from the both of you. So I'm very pleased
honored.
if I'm able to give back just a little.
Totally.
But yeah, thank you very much for having
We're
me.
going to look forward to your promoting your YouTube channel that you're going to go back and make. And
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, Jeremy, speaking of that, like, yeah, like, is there where I want to again give you guys a spotlight here? Like, is there anywhere where people can find you or anything you want to shout out, like anything you're working on or anything like that to the people here?
Currently, no, not realistically. I hope I'm able to like liberate some time to do a bunch of tutorials and just cool stuff. I have a lot of ideas, but currently I'm too deep in client work to be able to take the time. So not at this point.
stay
Anywhere
in
people
touch
can
for
connect
sure.
with you? Anywhere people can connect with you if they
Well,
want to?
absolutely. I'm in a number of Facebook groups related to WordPress. I'm always happy to discuss. I'm in the automatic CSS and inner circle communities as well. So if you're in there, just send a message. Always happy to connect.
Appreciate you being here, brother. Brendan, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, on Twitter. I'm in the Bricks community, ACSS. I now work part-time for ACSS, helping out with support. So if you have questions about that, let me know. Looking forward to more streams and connecting with people in the community. So I think Brendan O'Connell WP is the handle everywhere.
Nice. Sweet. Well, to the chat, to the people here, to the people watching on replay, can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for all the engagement. I thought this was a fantastic one. I know I learned a hell of a lot. I hope you guys did too. And again,
Thank you for hosting.
Hell yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank
Anytime. You guys are welcome back. Literally anytime you want, because I learn every time.
We hijacked your stream today, right? I mean,
It was amazing. Total incredible. I loved it. We had the surprise guest of Jeremy. It's fantastic. Jeremy, Brendan, cannot thank you guys enough for being here. Thank you so much.